Well, good afternoon, and I am so excited to be talking to Rhonda Stone and Dee Tadlock. And I'm going to turn things over to Rhonda in just a minute and ask her to tell us about herself and then Dr. Tadlock will also do the same. But first, I want to do a quick little share to tell you what we're talking about. And what we are talking about today is a position statement that they wrote. Um, for the Washington State House bill. And that bill says using evidence instructional based practices in reading and writing literacy for public elementary students. And both these folks here have take the position against. And by the way, this bill is one of many that are going around the country. And I will say there was one in California that was partially where the pushback against it was partially successful. There are some other ones going on in other states where we're starting to get pushback. I myself am calling this almost a grassroots movement in the different states. Now, I see my role in a lot of this as getting people to talk to one another and making people aware of one another. So one of the things I want to do today is, to make both Rhonda and Dee aware, and I'm positive they already are, that there are other states also where pushback is starting to happen. And it just seems to me that maybe if there's a good reason for pushback, and I think there is, and so do the both of them, if there's a good reason for pushback, then the people doing it ought to be talking to one another and maybe starting a grassroots movement around that. Now, I've done way too much talking, so I promise to turn it over to Rhonda. And Rhonda, from this point forward, uh, you'll tell us about yourself and how you got into this. Then Dee
You
will
bet.
do the same. And I'm going to say, take it away.
Okay. Dee and I have something in common. Both of us, in different decades, were raising children. And in my decade, the 1990s, the emerging science of reading was coming out. It started, of course, with the report of the Committee for the Prevention of Reading Difficulties in Young Children, and then it went to the National Reading Panel. I was on top of all of that because I was determined to make sure that my own children, my babies, as they were growing up, would not develop reading problems. So my mother is a retired first grade teacher. She, first and other grades, she had very successfully used whole language in the classroom. She was a successful whole language teacher. And I didn't go that path. I jumped totally and completely with whole faith on the phonics bandwagon. And I stuffed my little kids' heads full of phonics knowledge and had them decoding and was shocked as both developed serious reading problems. Well, I'd been working in education for 7 to 10 years in that time, and then I moved into healthcare because my background is actually journalism, and I'm skilled, very skilled in doing online research uh, for different organizations and then to build arguments for them. So I've been doing that for education and healthcare for decades. And so when this happened that my children didn't learn to read, I went into panic mode. That's when I met Dr. Tadlock. She was in a neighboring district. My own district had told me, Rhonda, we don't know how to fix reading problems. That was from the professionals. And of course, they don't admit that to other parents. They only admitted that to me because I had been in education. And so I went to see Dr. Tadlock, and she was the first person to tell me, well, Rhonda, intensive phonics and decoding actually can cause reading problems. Now, about a decade after that, Timothy Shanahan confirmed that to me personally on phone that overemphasis on phonics and decoding can cause reading problems. I'm going to let Dr. Tadlock take it from here because she's the expert, and what she's taught me over the past 25 years since I've met her is just amazing.
Okay, I have a PhD in education with a major in reading from Washington State University. And about the same time I was finishing that degree program, my younger son started first grade. And it soon became apparent to him, to his dad, to me, to his teacher, that he simply was not catching on. And after I got over the shock and awe of that, that's supposed to happen to other people's kids, not mine. My thought was, what a lucky little guy to have me for a mom, because a lot of the coursework in the PhD program had been, what do you do with struggling readers? So I thought I was well prepared to help him. He really, really wanted to learn to read, so he was very cooperative with me as I did what I was taught to do in the PhD program. And it didn't take a whole lot of time to learn that, bottom line, none of it worked. It simply did not work. He still couldn't read. And so my thought went immediately to, we must be doing it wrong. My child was bright. He was linguistically advanced for his age. He was highly motivated. He had learned how to do thousands of things since his birth. So why couldn't he learn how to read? It just didn't make sense. The only explanation that did make sense to me was, we're doing it wrong. We aren't teaching reading in a way that children can easily learn to read. And so I decided to help my son, that I would figure out a better way to teach reading. And step one was, what questions am I trying to solve? And after much thought, I came up with two questions that I thought were fundamental enough that if I could shed light, not necessarily answer, but shed light, that maybe I could come up with a more effective way to teach reading. And those questions were, one, how does the brain learn a process? Because reading is procedural. It isn't a declarative thing that the brain has to learn, like Columbus discovered America in 1492. It is a procedural thing, a how-to thing. And so I thought surely information about how the brain goes about learning a process would be helpful to me in my quest to figure out a more effective way to teach reading. My second question was, what do brains do when they are producing excellent reading? And by implication, how's that different from brains that aren't producing excellent reading? In other words, brains that reside in the skulls of people who have reading problems. So armed with those questions, I went to the library. I stepped outside the field of reading. Been there, done that, no answers there. And looked at fields of inquiry I thought would shed light. I looked at information theory, communication theory, language acquisition theory, linguistics, cognitive psychology, and paid particular attention to Piaget's learning theory, and cognitive psychology, neurobiology. And I synthesized information from those fields, always applying it to my questions. And finally, as I had hoped, I started having ideas about how reading might be more effectively taught. The problem was the timeline. It took me 3 years. By then, my son was in third grade for the second time, totally emotionally damaged because all too often at school, he was asked to do stuff he couldn't do because he couldn't read well enough to do it. He was verbalizing about how dumb he was. It was just heartbreaking. And I had been hands off those 3 years because my thinking was he does not need a failure environment from his mother. I continued reading to him as I had always done. But other than that, I did nothing. But now I had new things to try. So I started working with him eagerly with the system that we now call Read Write. And what I was hoping to see was an incremental improvement. But what I saw instead was a total elimination of his reading problem in 3 months, just gone. And he never had a whisper of a problem in school after that. He graduated time from a major university.
Dee, we've replicated that, and I think it's super important to mention that Dee took 10 years beta testing that in special education classrooms with kids of all ages. Then she took it to the world and started working across the country. And she's getting the same, she has gotten the consistent same result for decades. And the thing is, Dr. Sam, reading problems are supposed to be difficult to eliminate after grade 3. They're not. They're difficult to eliminate because we've been doing it wrong for 150 years.
Okay.
And we've been trying to remediate it using the same methods that caused the problems in the first place.
That's right. And Dr. Sam wants to get us going on because we only have 20 minutes, so he wants to
Okay.
get us going on.
I'd like to throw in my take on the big picture, and so I'm about to do that, and I'm going to. Uh, I'm having a little technical issue here, but that's all right. I'm just going to throw in my ideas on the big picture, and uh, first, I have also talked and talked with Dr. Shanahan and written extensively about him. I don't always agree with him, but I do think that there has been some movement within what I call the um, what I see as the actual science of reading people, the people that actually look at the research and do the research. And Dr. Shanahan is prominent among them. He wrote the big piece on it and the whole bit. So I think that when you look at it, we are seeing that folks that are what I call the actual researchers, uh, rather than the people that are the public relations folks, uh, the actual researchers have criticized what I've called the the social media version of science of reading. The long and the short of this is, bottom line, there are more there's more than one way to teach reading, and I'll put when I do my blog, you're going to hear all about that. I think that what you and Dee are doing is one example of one of those ways, but I don't think it's the only way, and that we may differ on that. But uh, there's more than one way to teach reading. The other thing is that discovery methods have to go that any program has to have both discovery methods and direct teaching in concert with each other. And think about Socrates, think about Aristotle. Aristotle, way back when, was a direct teaching person. Socrates was that uh, person who problem solved and did that kind of thing. Those two philosophies have existed now for 2,000 years and coexisted, and we need both of them. So
Exactly.
going into this, what I'm overall saying is that we should consider all the different ways of teaching reading. All the no, I said that wrong. We need to consider all the different methodologies we might use, and what works with one kid doesn't always work with another. There are some kids that really do need that synthetic phonics. There are some kids that really do need the kind of analytic things and the rest. Now,
That's, if I may, if I may respond to that remark, you're
sure,
right. That is what the world thinks. You're totally right. That's what the world thinks. The dilemma that we have, it goes back to the bill, which is what we're discussing today, the bill that we are against. The bills that have been passed throughout the United States, they're now 40, we might be the 43rd or 44th. I've been monitoring that very closely.
right,
I think you're getting to know, you're getting a sense of how detailed I am.
good,
I try to keep on top of all of that. The dilemma is that those bills are shutting out all other forms of phonics
except
acquisition
synthetic.
and use except synthetic. And the great dilemma, to be really frank, Dr. Sam, is that Dee's work has essentially proven that what causes most reading problems is overemphasis on phonics and decoding. Because I can say that because I teach kids to read at 5 and 6 years old without any decoding. None. Nobody believes it. But if you look at how very young children studied by, you'll recognize this name, I'm sure, because you're on top of everything, Dolores Durkin. If you look at those kids, and they are precocious readers who figured out how to read on their own, right? Without any intensive explicit phonics. My grandson is one of those 5. We followed Dee's book. We followed all the instructions in her book. He started reading at age 5 without any decoding, on his own, without any instruction. So the question isn't, I don't think we need to question. There are different ways to teach reading. I think what we need to question is, why are we passing laws that shut out other ways that the brain can use phonics, which is what we're opposed to in this particular bill.
Okay, and I think to clarify, because I do want to, uh, I'm probably not the world's most favorite person for the dyslexia crowd, for the people that strongly believe in dyslexia. But the fact is, I do believe there are some children that have a neurological problems where synthetic phonics is all that works for them. And I guess we disagree on that point, but I firmly believe that. The problem is that we have a group that has suddenly said everybody's that way, and we're going to do that for everybody. A group that has defined dyslexia uh, in a way that anybody with a reading problem has dyslexia, when instead the original definition was a brain-based definition. And when you look at the brain-based definitions and the work of people like Hoovery and others, you'll find that the percentage of the population that's actually dyslexic is nothing like some of the folks are making it out to be. So
Exactly.
I don't what in my opinion what has happened is when we go to either extreme, when we go to the extreme of all phonics or too much phonics, or when we and too much uh, synthetic phonics, or when we go to the extreme of only analytic phonics. And by the way, we had some conversations online where I think if you look at what your practice is, I think they fit nicely into the analytic phonics. So you are teaching a form of phonics where the child learns it by um, exploring. So I think the, where we had absolute agreement is we don't need to be banning any all forms of phonics to simply do synthetic phonics. And that's what this bill does, and that's why you're against it. So, boy, if we
That's what's been
just,
happening across the country.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So I think that's our area of agreement. So
Mhm.
I'm kind of looking at the clock and thinking, I know I took up some of your time, but I'm going to ask you both anything. I always ask this as my last question. Any burning issue that we haven't already covered that you want to say something about for either of you?
Dee has one, and it's about I think Dee wants to talk about the implicit nature of the reading process, Dee.
Yeah, the reading field has never acknowledged that procedural learning happens and is learned implicitly below the level of conscious awareness. All process learning happens below the level of conscious awareness. And there's no disagreement among neurologists about that fact. The reading field, in my view, has attempted to make reading something that you teach declaratively. And in so doing, they focus on figuring out what words are that can be taught. In actuality, in our view, the brain reads by anticipating meaning. It creates anticipatory systems relative to the author's intended meaning. And how does it do that? Well, who knows? It's happening implicitly below the level of conscious awareness. It can't be taught because of its implicit nature, but it can be figured out by the brain if the environment's right. And I think that concept is easier to understand if you think of bicycle riding. Nobody teaches anyone to ride a bike because nobody has any idea what the brain does to make it happen. We know intellectually that it involves muscle movement, moving the right muscle at the right time and the right amount. And we know that that is a dynamic process that changes if the wind is blowing in from a different direction. So it's incredibly complex. And virtually every kid figures out how to ride a bike if he has a bike available and wants to learn to ride it. And reading is the same way because it's a process. It happens below the level of conscious awareness, so it can't be taught, but it can be figured out if the environment is right.
Dee,
So
if
the
I
challenge for the educator is to create that environment.
And Dee, if I can, just to clarify, there are explicit elements that have to be explicitly taught, no doubt. And phonics information is among that, no doubt at all. The question is simply how much and how. And then the rest of procedural learning has to be the focus, and it has to be set to a standard of excellence from the beginning, not to a basic level of identifying single words. That's what opened the doors to the reading problem, opens the door to the reading problem. Dee, did I say that correctly? Is that accurate?
Yeah, and we use iceberg as a metaphor. The part that's sticking above the water represents the explicit aspect of any process and can and should be explicitly taught. But all the mass of the iceberg that is below the water level, that's the implicit aspects and constitute the majority of what must be learned to make the process happen. And that must be figured out by the brain, cannot be taught because of its implicit nature. So for reading, the explicit aspects is phonics. You can't read if you don't know phonics. But the question is, what does the brain do with it? How does the brain use phonics in the incredibly complex act of reading? The reading
And I think,
process uses
and
it
I,
to figure out what words are, and we're
and I,
saying,
and I think, Dr. Sam, I think you're in agreement with that. You said it earlier. The issue is there are different ways that the brain can use phonetic information, right?
Right. And I do want to wrap things up by saying this. I think when people see a video like this, they always look for the soundbite. And I think for this video, the soundbite is how much, and what kind. And if different people have different answers to that, but you can't have a situation where what you're saying is you only can have this kind, and we're going to give you just lots of it. So I think the key is figuring out how much and what kind. And I'm going to remind our viewers that this document will be available for downloading, and that this document has so many wonderful uh, uh, links in it, including the links to how SOR was not uh, ever scientifically tested before it was rolled out, and the links to the sources of what kind of phonics knowledge there are. And these are all links that Dr. Um, Tadlock has provided us. So if people that are looking at this document who don't take a look at all these different links that Dr. Tadlock has provided, will be missing out on a lot. So I hate to
May
say it.
I know we're out of time, but may I give my husband the last word? He just
Sure.
passed me a note
Oh,
listening
oh,
into what I was
sure.
telling
Let's
you.
do that, and I'll
And
stop
and
the
a
share.
brief no, well, a brief background about my husband. My husband works at the state level in education related to funding and school funding. He's been watching this for years too, and he's been watching the failure that our millions and billions of dollars are producing. This is what he passed to me. He said, quote, evidence-based research says the earth is flat. Well, that's what they used to think, right? All heavenly bodies revolve around the earth. Well, that was disproven, right? He says we need a law that prohibits all scientific research into other possibilities. And he's right. And we need to apply that same thinking to phonics and decoding. We can't limit how researchers are investigating what works.
Well, that's an equally good soundbite. Would you say that last sentence one more time?
The last sentence is
We can't.
we now know the earth isn't flat, but
Well,
we need a law.
just bring it down to we can't.
We cannot pass laws that limit how scientists, education scientists, research phonics. Right now, they're locked into decoding, and we can't do that. That's not appropriate. There are other ways the brain can use phonetic information.
Perfect. Okay. Boy, a lively session. A little bit of agreement. And by the way, maybe we're giving people an example of it's okay to disagree, and we can still be very good friends when we do. And now I'm going to change the setting here, to the final view setting, so we see everybody again. Now we're seeing everybody, and you know what's coming. I've already told you. The final thing in a Bomarito interview is that Zoom wave goodbye. So if everyone could just please raise your hands and give us a nice smile and Zoom wave goodbye. And thank you for this lively discussion.